Steam has been organizing a showcase of indie games, the Steam Next Week. Many demos are now available on the Steam market, and I thought I would give this event a fair chance. I'll be honest, I wanted to dedicate individual segments to each game, but most of them turned out to not be particularly great. They all have a common theme. Interesting, but lacking in execution. I will instead do a sizzle reel for most of them, and dedicate more time to the games that really captured my attention or had something in particular that was inspiring. Thief Simulator started great when described. You're a thief, in first person, planning out your crimes using a variety of gadgets and tools and ensuring that you have a route in and out of the crime scene. Well, as soon as I booted the game, I noticed it had terrible optimization. I have a pretty okay rig, 12 gigs of RAM with a GTX 1650, and I have ran far more demanding games while streaming and recording without issue. This game made my computer slow down, and even while downgrading everything, I have not noticed much difference in the graphics department. I keep wondering what caused the slowdown because nothing looks that great, even on high settings. The frame rate was better and I had turned off my OBS, wondering if the capture caused the slowdown, but the FPS didn't improve that much. It's then that I wondered if the game's own launcher didn't cause this. Yes, this Euro jank-ass game seems to have its own launcher. I'm improvising a bit, but while we're on the subject, I am pretty tired of games and companies having their own proprietary launcher. In the age of the internet, I'm trying to have as small of a digital print as possible, like Jack Reacher.
This is kind of impossible.
What's that?
This Reacher fella. So far run on his prints has been clean, but something could still turn up. But there's no Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, no driver's license, mortgage, insurance claims, no online profile at all. The only proof Jack Reacher exists is the fact that he's sitting in that room.
And honestly, having to create accounts just for one game that I'm not gonna play more than 2 or 3 times is kind of annoying. It wouldn't be that bad if it was an entire catalog, but just for one game, even if I replay it more than 2 or 3 times, it's pretty annoying. And even if you don't have to create an account, it's still quite distressing because most of the time, launchers demand a lot of time and effort. Honestly, outside of Steam and GOG, there's not really any launcher that's worth your time. And as we have seen in the past with launchers like Epic, Uplay, that's now Ubisoft Connect, and the like, the launchers seem to cause a lot of tremendous slowdown and performance issues. I didn't buy Mafia 2 and the Mafia Definitive Edition on PC specifically for that. So now you're an indie game, and you're telling me that you have your own specific semi-launcher. It doesn't really help your chances of me buying you. Okay, now back to the script. Ikikomori life is pleasant. You're a shut-in otaku trying to balance his needs. The mechanics are kinda light, but you fall into a pleasant rhythm. Unfortunately, the game just ends and it doesn't really elaborate. You have to take care of your needs, but you also die if you don't play games. You improve your PC, which gives you better games, which fills your bar far more quickly, and once satisfied, you can spend more time doing other things like working and getting better goods and services to have more times for games. There is a gameplay loop. This game should honestly be a free-to-play Flash game. It's about as basic as that. Super Meat Boy had far more complexity even before being expanded. Soldiers is a beautiful game visually, more than beautiful even. However, by God is it boring. The trailers show that there's a bit more to it, but I simply wasn't impressed. The experience is literally light and heavy attack. It's as basic as it can be. and I guess it's also a Metroidvania. The fact that there seems to be a far grander story going on in the background while you're playing a nobody doesn't help. I thought I was playing the cool main protagonist, but no. I'm nobody. God knows that trope doesn't work. And now, for the games that actually left an impression on me. Trailout is a barely comprehensible, barely legible, racing Eastern European game, so Eurojank, that functions well but seems to mess up basic features like braking, for example. While the game provides English voice acting and titles, it sounds and writes like a parody of a Russian. I do not understand what's happening in the story. In fact, it constantly cuts from event to event at a breakneck speed, which doesn't help. And despite all this, I love the game. It's bad in a good way, and despite all I've said, the game features interesting elements, like races and demolition, but also features like her driver being ejected out of the car after a crash. The game is decently optimized and does have a lot of positive energy. It's charming. You build your own car and choose different parts, even down to the motor and suspension, and you take it on various tracks. You have arenas, but also traditional tracks and tracks that have intersections, so you might be in first but cross the one in last. Honestly, you have to be a good game or a bad game, but you can't be boring, and this game is everything but Eurojank. Ignited Steel is at first looking akin to all the other games at the beginning. Interesting, but too simple. You have units that pilot mechs. 3 parts can be equipped for each mech. The parts have different ranges and affect other units differently. You can choose to when your turn now or play, and during your enemy's turn you can fast forward. There's enough, but what really makes the difficulty of the experience resides in the simple placement of units and decision making. Each turn becomes increasingly harder. You can help yourself by destroying nodes that will spawn enemies, but every action you take, with exception, generates heat. When maxed, heat makes you more powerful, but you damage yourself and you receive more as well. Add to the contracts that give you constraint, and you really have something going. Taking constraints gives you rewards, but it might be hard to not go to the shop for 6th level. Indeed, there's levels, but they're laid out like a Star Fox map. In between levels, you have a chance to equip and buy again. You have to choose well. If all of that wasn't enough, the music is actually pretty good. It ranges from rock to techno, a vibe that really fits a mech tactic game. The energy of rock fits the mood of war, and the techno, the more technological aspects. The visuals are also nothing to laugh at. They remind me of Ghost Trick on the DS. 2D backgrounds paired with 3D models. They're integrated well and do not clash with the environment. Definitely a recommend. Scade is a game that really nails the music and visuals of Doom Eternal. Yes, specifically Eternal. The problem is that it's all that it masters. It doesn't nail the gameplay at all. When you first move, it seems nice. You're fast, you have a dash, a main fire, an alt fire, then you actually shoot. Enemies don't really react and don't move. Also, I finished the demo in 5 minutes and ran past monsters. At the end, the demo claims that this is a labyrinth and that you should try different avenues, but honestly, why? It's not engaging. The game focused too much on ripping off Doom assets rather than actually having a solid base. If monsters are not inert enough, they have really redundant patterns and react poorly. Also, for some reason, shooting enemies makes the screen flash red. It can be turned off, but at first you have the impression of receiving negative feedback when you kill something. Co-op is also not something that's going to fix things. The game is too far along to really change. since it's a 2022 release. But I guess that you can pride yourself in the fact that you don't have a cyber demon, you have a virtual demon. It's legally distinct. Even though it doesn't look the part visually, I have to say that Turbo Overkill is the real inheritor of 90s FPS. Its neon look, its hyper-realism contrasted with pixel PS1 graphics, may look far away from its predecessor, but it does look good. The only thing lacking is the design of the main character. He looks weird. Despite this, the game features really advanced post-processing and looks sharp. It also plays sharp. All things are covered. Varied mobs, where each adversary has a distinct form of attack. You need to prioritize depending on the composition of the mob. Some enemies might be far away and shooting projectiles, while others are rushing you at high speed. Maps that are big but not too much, that are packed full of secrets. Varied weapons, no 2-weapon limit, and no reloads. In the demo, there was also an upgrade system, but most of it was locked. The little that was unlocked was quite promising. You had your chainsaw leg, you had your shield, which is basically just armor from Doom and Wolfenstein, and you had a metal boot that allowed you to wall run. It's also another one with striking music. It combines elements from Doom Classic, Synthwave, and Doom Eternal. It sounds like you're going from Megadeth to 80s nostalgia to Mick Gordon. It looks and sounds redundant at first, but it's actually quite unique. The wait is killing me. It only has the 2022 release window. The project seems to be quite far along, so the wait should not be too long, but it's still hard to not have it now. Honestly, it's one of those games where I don't care if it's early access or if it's brand new. I am not gonna wait to buy it. I'm willing to buy it at full price and give as maximum as I can to that project, because honestly, like I said earlier, we live in an age where the AAA industry has completely gone off rails, and you more or less have to play AA, B, or indie games. And even then, you might have games in those categories that are anti-consumer, but honestly, let's be honest, it's not going to be anti-consumer, it's mostly going to be woke. So for once, I have a game that's actually really entertaining. It doesn't seem to have politics. It has a really distinct style, despite the fact that it looks redundant at first. It copies games from the past, but it copies them well and has its own unique personality. It becomes more than the sum of its parts. For the other games, I do admit that most of them were quickly on the uninstall list. But despite all of this, it was still worthwhile to at least try something new or be proposed something new. I can't complain, especially in the industry that we have now. And it's better to try and maybe have a little bit of disappointment than be stuck with the status quo of having gigantic AAA releases that are just insulting to their consumer.